Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this red-black or Rakdos Dragons deck, which kind of plays out as a mid-range deck, as we've got lots of cheap interaction for all the aggro decks in the format. We've got a little bit of ramp to then try and set up our 4 and 5 mana dragons, which can often take over the game. So taking a look at some of the new additions from Tarkir Dragonstorm, we've got Sarkon Dragon Ascendant, a 2/2 that when it enters can behold a dragon, so either reveal a dragon from our hand or have one in play, and then we get to make a treasure token, so a 2/2 that makes a treasure is already pretty good, but then whenever a dragon we control enters, we can put an additional counter on Sarkon, it gains flying and becomes a dragon until end of turn, so a very nice 2-drop to kick things off, and then that can often set up some of our 4 mana dragons on turn 3, and there's a few of those with the new Scavenger Regent, which also has an Omen that we can cast, giving all non-dragons -X/-X until end of turn, so that also gives the deck a sweeper against go-wide decks, which is great, but can also be cast as a 4/4 flyer with a ward, making the opponent discard a card. Then there's a Decadent Dragon that can first maybe use the Adventure, exiling the top 2 cards of an opponent's library, and then later can also cast the 4/4 with Flying, Trample, and whenever it attacks makes a treasure token, so that can also help cast the cards we exiled with the Adventure. And then there's the new Magmatic Hellkite, a 4/5 flyer, and when it enters it can destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. They do get a land in return that they get to search up, but it will have a stun counter on it, so the opponent won't be able to use it for a turn, so that can slow the opponent down and maybe mess up some of their multicolor mana bases. And then topping off our curve, we also have 2 copies of the Bonehorde Dragosaur, a 5 mana 5/5 dragon with flying and first strike, and if it survives until our upkeep, we get to exile the top 2 cards of our library that we get to play until end of turn, generating additional treasure tokens and 3/1 dinosaur tokens in the process, so a very powerful card if it can stick around. And then our final dragons include Shivan Devastator, which we can cast at any point in our curve, and then can also make for a great mana sink to close out the game with flying and haste. And then the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, a 3 mana 2/2 dragon with double strike, and we can also unearth it out of the graveyard, and then when it enters from our graveyard we get to discard our hand and draw 3, so a nice way to refuel if we've already emptied our hand. And then Rivas, another payoff for the red-black dragon archetype, a 3/3 with Menace that can tap for 2 mana to cast our dragon spells, and once each turn can recast a dragon spell out of our graveyard, and nowadays we would call it a finality counter. If that creature gets destroyed, it gets exiled instead. And then Invasion of Tarkir, another payoff for the dragon deck, as we can enhance the damage it deals when it enters by revealing dragons from our hand, and then it's not too difficult to deal 5 damage to a battle with our many flying dragons, and then a Defiant Thundermaw is quite the payoff, a 4/4 flying dragon with trample that also deals 2 damage to any target whenever we attack with any of our dragons, so that can trigger multiple times in a single attack step if we've got lots of attacking dragons. And then to round things out, 1-off Ironcrag as another way to maybe cast our 4 mana dragons on turn 3. And then Mox Jasper is a great way for us to maybe cast a dragon and then still have 1 mana up to cast our other interaction, such as the new Caustic Exile, giving a creature -3/-3 until end of turn, and we just have to behold the dragon to get the 1 mana discount, otherwise it will cost us 2 mana instead, so this can also be a great answer to a Heartfire hero, which would otherwise deal additional damage when it dies. Now we get to just shrink it down and potentially not take any damage. And then a Cut Down, another efficient removal spell that we can cast for single black. The rest is going to be a bit better against other combo and control strategies, but even against aggro there's usually a burn spell or a pump spell we can take away. And then being a mid-range deck means we also have access to some very nice lands in our mana base that can help out. Theater letting us surveil 1 when it enters tapped. There's a Restless Vents also entering tapped, but can turn into a 2/3 menace creature that can also improve our hand. And then we've got Cavern of Souls, making our dragons uncounterable, which can be very useful against control. Don't want your 4 and 5 mana dragons getting countered. And then Maelstrom of the Spirit Dragon has also been quite impressive. Can later sacrifice it to search up any dragon in our deck, so that can also find a finisher, or if we really need a sweeper, we can also get our Scavenger Regent. And if we use the Omen, it will also get shuffled back into our library, so we'll have access to it once again. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Sarkon trying to ramp out a Dragosaur on turn 4. Got a replacement Sarkon if it does get removed, so it's not that bad. And then the treasure can also cast the Exile for us. I guess we will need an extra land, although maybe we'll find some 4-mana dragon we can cast if I bottom here. Could be greedy, but since we have double Sarkhan, we should eventually get up to 5 mana. Nightmare, I guess, means I discard a Sarkhan now. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to hang on to the Dracosaur if our opponent's got more discard effects. So it looks like Esper Pixie, Momentum Breaker deals with Sarkhan, but we still got our treasure. So next turn we can cast a Dracosaur, but if they have another Momentum Breaker, we're gonna be sad. And between Pixie and Fear of Isolation, they can likely pick up the Momentum Breaker to deal with the Dracosaur after all. This down in big enough, also quite effective against our 4 and 5 mana dragons. So this is probably a tough matchup. And yeah, there's the Fear. So we're not gonna wanna cast a Dracosaur into a known Momentum Breaker. But I guess we're not doing much else. So maybe I do still go for it and then just hope to draw more dragons afterwards. Feels pretty awful though. There is also the Maelstrom that we could activate. Yeah, I regret discarding Sarkhan earlier, since we could have used it as sacrifice fodder. A Dragon Engine I don't mind losing, although they probably have other answers to it now. Like I know where to run. Well, at least we can still bring it back out of the graveyard at some point to refuel, so it's not a disaster. And a Trainer, alright, don't see that one in every Pixie deck. Finds a Nightmare, so discard Mountain, cast Dracosaur, which soaks up Momentum Breaker, and then a Dragon Engine hopefully finds us more goodies. Opponent's just gonna cast a Momentum Breaker now. Well, I'll still hang on to the Dracosaur. Is it possible they have more in hand? But now we're empty-handed at least. Maybe they have a bounce spell and then they can bounce Dracosaur and make us discard it. Would also make sense. Yep. So they're just bouncing nowhere to run Momentum Breaker. Momentum Breaker gets Dracosaur. The good news is that we're not under a ton of pressure. And then Exhale, I guess we can time to cast it in response to the trigger. As we'll control a dragon, so I can cast it for 1 mana. But before I have to discard it. Now they do still have their Nightmare in hand, so they will be able to make me discard one of the 3 cards. So we might want to keep lands in hand. Could also Duress, take away the Nightmare. Yeah, they could have another Momentum Breaker or Town Ain't Big Enough in hand, so I think I do cast it now. Alright, take that away. So, as the dust settles, our opponent will have nowhere to run, 1 unknown. We're gonna be empty-handed, but at least we'll have a Vents. Alright, Scavenger was a good pickup. So that's something that can apply pressure to us. And they still have removal for Restless Vents available. Although now Invasion's an interesting twist. So if I cast the Invasion, they'll probably cast a Nowhere to Run just to save the Scavenger. And then the Vents can start attacking. Alternatively, I can sack the Maelstrom to get a dragon. And I could make it another Dracosaur. And then, let's see, that costs 4 mana, so then I can still Invasion, dealing 3 to the Scavenger. Yeah, that's gotta be better. And then Dracosaur is the most exciting dragon in and of itself. So yeah, I think that checks out. Could also go for another engine if we suspect that it's going to get removed anyway. But Dracosaur does survive, nowhere to run. Okay, so the Maelstrom being pretty relevant here. So opponent's gonna draw an answer to the Dracosaur, and they're gonna scry 2. Bottom, I like to see that. No upkeep stop to sack another Nightmare, maybe because they wanna be able to pick it up to make us discard. So far so good. So cast Dracosaur. I think I'm still okay playing the Theater as opposed to keeping it for Vents, since our deck can be mana hungry. And then Dracosaur can also transform the invasion at once. So big draw step coming up. Can they find a solution to the Dracosaur problem? And a bounce effect for Momentum Breaker will do it, and looks like they found it. Alright, so then once again they have nowhere to run to answer Restless Vents, so we're back to top decking. And they also kept another card on top. Well, I guess I can try and run it back. This I can activate at any point. Yeah, there's no... I guess I could get a Dragon Engine, put it in play. And they're probably gonna remove it, since a 2/2 double strike would outrace them at the moment. So maybe that's worthwhile. As opposed to trying to get some other expensive dragon that's probably gonna end up getting bounced again. And then threatening to transform the invasion by attacking it is also pretty decent. Opponent's not going for nowhere to run yet. This is for 2. Speed is maxed out. And we drew another invasion. So I'll start by attacking the invasion, I think. I don't animate Vents. And then invasion can transform invasion. So they let that happen. They don't want to take out the engine, so I don't get to draw 3, which makes sense. But now we control a Thundermaw. So we'll see if that sticks around or not. Can also activate Vents in response to a Momentum Breaker, should they answer the engine first. Another Scavenger, step 1. What's that last unknown? Might be another nowhere to run to double target the Thundermaw. Looks like it's... So then as the dust settles, I can still send the Vents at the invasion to make another Thundermaw. So they're maybe considering keeping the Kirin back. Yep, makes sense. Iron Crag, not an amazing draw, so I want to discard it with the Vents attack. And I think we're committed. Could draw into instant speed removal as well. Alright, the Regent can maybe finish stuff off. If they double block the Vents, which is likely, then I put Scavenger first. And then I can finish off both of their creatures. Which seems worth it here. Okay, so now our opponent's top decking. We're 1 damage away from transforming the invasion. Although there's definitely some good top decks for the opponents. Any of their bounce spells, like a Fear. And the Storm Chaser's Talent would be very good as well. Alright, so I guess we start by attacking. Opponent probably uses their removal. I'm happy if we trade. And then we'll play Hellkites before unearthing the engine. And then looking at the opponent's mana, any land in particular. Probably want to cut off their blue and black mana the most. We'll see if they have any basics left. They do. Alright, so now Hellkite can transform Invasion even through a nowhere to run. So if our opponent can just brick for a turn, that would be great. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome! What a grind fest. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. A light on interaction, perhaps. So against aggro, we might suffer. But at least we're off to a decently fast start with Sarkhan, setting up maybe a turn 3 Decadent Dragon. Hardclaw just gets in for 1, and there's a Heartfire Hero. Alright, Exile was a perfect draw. Can still cast it if needed through the treasure. So it's pretty well disguised. I'll show them a Dracosaur, I think. Since that's probably the least meaningful card to show them. Might also make them think that we want to preserve the treasure token. Alright, opponent's got a Screaming Nemesis, so Exile is a very nice answer to that. Do we cast it now? I can then still play an engine on 3 Growing Sarkhan. So I think that's reasonable. Just play it safe. Even though I could also wait for them to maybe commit a Monstrous Rage first. That could also backfire if they have multiple pump spells. So now Rivas is also an option, and it's a pretty appealing one. So I think I'm down. Even though it doesn't grow Sarkhan. It does set up Dracosaur next turn. Opponent's got another Claw. Speaking of claws. Alright, so they can pump this one. So this definitely implies that they have a Monstrous Rage. I could still flush it out in a way. Let's say I put Rivas in front of Hardclaw, then they're forced to Monstrous Rage, we still trade. And then they're not putting it on Heartfire Hero, which would hurt a little bit more. Could also double block, hoping they don't have double Monstrous Rage. And then they either take out Rivas, preventing me from casting Dracosaur, or they get to take out Sarkhan for free. But then Rivas lives unless they also have a burn spell, I guess that could also be part of the equation. So if they have burn spell plus Monstrous Rage, this block isn't great. Although I can still follow up with a Decadent Dragon, so it's not a disaster. I think we try it. Alright, so Monstrous Rage Heartfire Hero would make sense. Do you also have another pump spell or burn spell? Looks like it. So they can finish off Rivas. Alright, they don't. Well, in that case, I'll cast a Dracosaur. Hope you don't have a Witchstalker Frenzy, which would deal 5. But I'm kind of locked into this play. And then do I need a Verge? Not really. Yeah, our opponent does have a 1-mana instant, it seems. It could be another Monstrous Rage, but it would have made sense for them to just cast it last turn. Maybe it is the burn spell and they're just waiting to cast it with Kicker. Still would have made sense to finish off Rivas, so I couldn't cast a Dracosaur, since 5-power First Strike blocks the hero quite profitably. So yeah, opponent's forced to pass it back. Make a Dino, and then now we've got options, including using the Adventure and then still casting the Decadent Dragon. Don't hate that idea. Dracosaur's gonna play defense for now. We're not in a hurry. And yeah, there's Burst Lightning as well. So cast our Decadent Dragon, I think, over keeping a Burst Lightning. And pass. Manifolds can now give double strikes, so that would hurt. Although it's still a trade I'm happy to make, all things considered. We do see Dreadmaws Ire, so it is possible that's the instant in their hands. And that would be quite painful. I guess I can double block Heartfire Hero with the 2 dragons, and then if they don't have anything significant, we still just trade in first strike, taking 4. If they do have removal, then hopefully we don't take quite as much damage. Is there any point in blocking with a dinosaur token as well? Yeah, you know what, let's just put as much toughness in front of it as possible. I don't think we care if the 3-1 dies. Alright, opponent just had another Monstrous Rage, doesn't increase toughness. So, trade still happens. They've already triggered Valiant for the turn. Does mean we take 6 on the way out. So it wasn't completely useless. And Dracosaur we can also replay thanks to Rivas. But step 1 is probably to Burst Lightning the Manifold Mouse, since that card can be scary. So then replay Dracosaur. Can attack with Decadence. Make a treasure. And then Sarkon makes another treasure. Alright, so we're kind of doing it here. Just gotta hope they don't burn us out from here, so we do want to try and close out the game. Hard Claw attacks. Can double block. So if their hand is a bunch of Burst Lightnings and Lightning Strikes, we could still die. Find another Sarkon. Invasion. So let's start with that one while we still have a dragon in hand. Target my opponents. Cast Engine. Our opponent's at 13, so this would be a lethal attack. Can also send in the Vents and then still cast the Dreadmaws Ire. And then if they have to use removal on one of my creatures, we're pretty happy. They also get a treasure. Opponent's casting Lightning Strike face. Was this just an epic slow roll? Or is this a Witchstalker Frenzy? Shock, wow. So we fall to 1. Incredibly close. Feels like the game might have played out differently with some different decisions. But yeah, that's why we play the game. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with keepable hands. Cut down on 1, turn to Ironcrag, and up against probably green-white rabbits. So, can wait and see if we need to cut down the Might Caller. We probably will. And Sanctifier's next. So this could be a matchup for our Sweeper Dragon using the Omen, and there it is, Speak of the Devil. So, yeah, for now play Iron Crag. And then next turn we could give -2/-2. Hopefully that's enough. And yeah, opponent's making lots of tokens, so definitely the card we needed for this matchup. So let's see here. Yeah, I could also play Devastator X = 1, then play Jasper, and then I guess it would only be -1/-1, so that doesn't seem worth it. So instead we can just cast this for 2. And then next turn, Devastator plus perhaps Mox Jasper can still set up a second spell. The Mentor's no longer all that big. And a Quest Caller. Might have wanted to sequence those differently to scry one, as our opponent realizes. Okay, so now the Dragon Engine could be worth playing first, making sure not to, I guess it doesn't matter with the Maelstrom here. Still have red mana, that doesn't cost me life. And then now I could go Jasper, Devastator for 2, or I can wait and then next turn cast a huge one, or we could sack the Maelstrom and find another dragon, which could once again be a sweeper as well, if we feel like it. So interesting spots. I think I will wait, although if they offer the trades, I might take them up for it. So probably shouldn't have shown them the Jasper yet, but our opponent passes anyway. So then now Devastator can be cast for X = 6, I believe. That can start attacking, whereas Dragon Engine plays defense. Sheltered by Ghosts, that's actually the perfect answer to a Devastator, because even if we remove the Mentor, we're not going to get anything significant back. I think we still trade for the Mentor itself, just because it threatens to become much larger, even though the Devastator doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And then next turn I could just get the engine back from the graveyard after maybe playing a land out. And then do we prefer surveilling or putting a creature land in play? If I draw well off the Unearth, I probably prefer just improving my draw with a surveil as opposed to relying on the vents. Plus there's always the Maelstrom, which can get other dragons. So we'll give this a try. Finding a cheap removal spell would be fine too. Another engine, I guess that's reasonable. And then I might want to leave mana for cut down available. Which I guess with Jasper we should be fine. Sure. And then Hellkite will have to wait. For now get in for 4. Alright, but next turn we can double spell. They also only have the one actual white source to cast cards like Sheltered and hop to it. So taking that out could also be effective. Alright, Paw Patch with Offspring, and they can still activate the village. So that was a pretty good draw. They get to scry a couple times as well. Although with Hellkite we'll make them shuffle if they did keep cards on top. So play Hellkite. Go for Brushland still, I think. And then Engine plus tapped vents. So we've got reasonable blocks available. Opponent passes. And then now I'm potentially looking at the Maelstrom, so it's 4 mana to sacrifice. So then I could still cast a -3 sweeper afterwards. So then the engine may as well... I guess it's non-dragon, so yeah, I should just go for it now. We've got one of those left. I guess never mind 2, because it does get shuffled back if we use the Omen. So that's pretty neat. And then 3 is the magic number. So yeah, the Mox Jasper is being useful as an extra mana source. Attack you for 8. And then next turn we should be able to close it out with maybe a Restless Vents attacking as well. Opponent can now make the tokens. It's possible they drew it last turn, but because of their only white source being tapped, they were unable to cast it. And yeah, now with the village, those turn into 2/2s. Although if I attack, they're still forced to block. I guess the vents they could let through. But if I can play the Dracosaur regardless, then I may as well get in for 2 extra damage. And then I can loot away the Verge. And still cast a painless Dracosaur. Now with the Exhale, if I cast it, I guess we could let our opponent chump the vents or double block it, but yeah, opponent has seen enough. Sweet, so yeah, pretty nice grindy game, and getting to see the flexibility of these dragons as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Got the early cut down, and then Rivas can set up a big Devastator. We've got Regent for more interaction if needed. And I think I'm okay with an extra land. Even though our turns aren't necessarily scripted, feels like I can make use of the mana up against the blue-whites. Don't think we're playing Devastator for 1 yet. So banned deck, but not your typical domain. So we'll see if Rivas resolves. It does. But they might have removal for it. Overlord, alright, so they are still ramping. So then now could make a 5/5 Devastator with haste, or I can just play the Regent, attack for 3, or play Regent, play a tap land. All reasonable options. If we're gonna get our board wiped next turn, I guess I want to get in damage while I can. And then Regent is a reasonable follow-up. Sure. But yeah, if this is a Sunfall, we're not going to be happy. Since the late game probably favors the deck that's likely playing up the Beanstalk. Although Hellkite is decent here. Do we blow up the Everywhere to slow down Leyline Binding, or do we go for Anchorage? I think the Everywhere is more important. If they are on a Leyline Binding, then now they're back to just the one basic type. Although they will likely find a second. And now just cast an Overlord. Double Exhale can take care of it. If I Exhale, this turns into a 3/2, so then Cut Down could also work. So we have a few options on how to deal with it. Could also just cast the Regent, let him keep Overlord for a turn. I would attack putting them to 11. So then we have a 2-turn clock with our 2 dragons. Next turn the Overlord of Hauntwoods also shows up. So it's also possible I want to set up Regent to wipe their board. Although that will require 2 more lands, or let's see, I guess a 1 land and then casting both Exhales would do it too. So there's a lot of permutations here. Maybe for now I just attack with the Restless Vents. Hit you for 6. Ditch the cut down. And now with a Swamp I can still cast a double Exhale on the Overlord, which might be the move, but we can wait. Opponent's gonna stock up. And they found a Get Lost. Alright, that's too bad, so there goes our pressure. I guess I should have cast the Exhale while we still control the dragons. I didn't need to show them the Regent. But their opponent's gonna get another Overlord end of turn. Alright, opponent counters, that's surprising. They could have waited for the second Exhale, so now I'm pretty happy this worked out. So I guess now an untapped land lets me use Regent to get rid of both Overlords, which would be convenient. Or we can draw Dracosaur, which can block them profitably. And then worst case scenario, if they remove it, even with the Incubator, we can still Exhale to take care of it, and then we're not dead. Although it feels like I might want to explore here. And then I would be dead to double Overlord plus Incubator unless we draw into an untapped black source, which is definitely not a guarantee here. So I think I play it safe, although it's going to be difficult to make a comeback if we're at 2 life. Yep. Alright, opponent's not going for the Incubator. Feels like maybe they should have, but I guess they knew about us not exploring, so they maybe suspected the Exhale. I don't think I cast it. Although now Mirax is going to be a problem. And I guess our opponent can not quite double Mirax end of turn, but then the Incubator would be lethal. So yeah, I guess we're dead anyway. A Regent for 5, and then Incubator can cross the finish line, so yeah, maybe not activating it made sense if they suspected another Exhale. Alright, if they had a counterspell in hand, then they definitely should have activated, because then they just had lethal last turn. But yeah, so it goes. Didn't expect to win this matchup. Our opponent's definitely better prepared to win a long game. And our start was not particularly explosive. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand has a lot of cheap interactions, so good against aggro. Could use an actual dragon to kind of top off our curve, but I'll try it. And against the red-white. Opponent plotting a ruckus, so yeah, this could be a decent hand for the matchup. I think we do keep up removal to try and snipe the creature they try and enchant with a ruckus. Next turn I can have a look with Duress. I guess if they have a Shard Mage's Rescue, I might regret not going for Duress. But our opponent now plotting a Slick Shot. Okay, so we are fine to now cast a Duress. Could also play Sarkhan, and then with a treasure I can still... I guess never mind, I don't have a dragon to reveal. So yeah, we'll wait on Sarkhan. Opponent has Ethereal Armor, Monstrous Rage. So I currently cannot Exhale for 1 mana either. So I think I need to take the Rage, because that can save their creature from a cut down at instant speed. So yeah, drawing a dragon's pretty important here to enable some of our synergies. Opponent just casting a 2 mana Slick Shot. Another one from exile. And then now we can cut down, hoping they haven't drawn some instant in response. That works. So no draw of Ruckus. They can still Ethereal Armor the other Slick Shot, but then it would still die to the Exile. So then we've decimated the opponent's entire board. And we drew a dragon, so that's the cherry on top. So I could go Sarkhan and then still Exile for 1 mana. That seems like the play. Question is whether I cast it now or wait for them to maybe commit more pump spells. And that seems a little risky if they draw another Monstrous Rage here. Behold the dragon, take that out. Okay, so clear board. Clear skies for these dragons to take over now. And a land means I can cast the dragon, play Jasper, and still Invasion. So yeah, sequencing is important. I cannot cast Invasion revealing the dragon, because then Mox Jasper doesn't produce mana. Could also Adventure, of course, but I think we want to get this game over with. And then I'll attack the Invasion for 3, so we can get our Thundermaw online. And then we still have Maelstrom to potentially find another dragon if needed. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. So yeah, that's the power of this Rakdos Dragons deck with all our cheap interaction. Good to see the Jasper, Sarkhan, Exile, so all of the new cards in action. And yeah, this is kind of the perfect setup against aggro. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. No real interaction. Only 1 dragon, although at least this one can get value out of the graveyard as well. And then we're pretty well set up to draw some more expensive creatures. For now, Sarkhan. Reveal Engine. So next turn I could cast Engine, play Jasper, and still deploy an Ironcrag if I really wanted to. Opponent on maybe a Pixie deck. Alright, Invasion's good too. So how about we go Ironcrag into Invasion, deal with a Scavenger, attack the Invasion, and then next turn we can transform it with a Flying Sarkhan. Although it is possible our opponent's playing with Shard Mage's Rescue. I guess we can kind of tell if they're keeping up interaction here. Doesn't seem like it. And then I guess I could have revealed, but 2 damage will suffice. Okay, so we've got a plan. Will it work out, or does our opponent remove Sarkhan? So currently it might just be a black-white build. Nightmare, let's see, if I unearth, then it returns to the battlefield. I mean, I could maybe consider discarding the engine, but I'm still happy to cast it. So maybe I ditch the Jasper, keep the land. So if they have a nowhere to run, they could deal with Sarkhan and prevent us from transforming the Invasion. Opponent's gonna pick up the Nightmare and recast it. Yeah, I mean, I could ditch the Theater, because otherwise I would have to discard whatever I draw into, which is not necessarily something we want. So now our opponent has to chump with a Pixie to prevent us from making a Thundermaw. So now they're on the back foot. And the engine is happy to trade, or it can also help us get the Thundermaw, so opponent lets it go. Sarkhan grows once again. And I'll play my land out, so we don't have to worry about more copies of Hopeless Nightmare. So I'm liking my spot. If our opponent can't answer a Thundermaw, they're in trouble. If they have Momentum Breaker, we're happy to sack the engine. Temporary Lockdown. I guess they're planning to bounce with their own stuff. And yeah, that does actually take care of the Thundermaw, since it is still technically 2 mana. So that's a little awkward. But I guess it means that if they do deal with their own lockdown, We'll also get Invasion, Ironcrag and Sarkhan back. And for now we've got another Invasion that we can try and transform. So now I might need an extra land to unearth the engine, as we lost a bunch of our mana sources. And a Leyline of the Void. Alright, I guess that stops us from unearthing the dragon engine now. But I can cast the Invasion before attacking, transforming the first one, and then hoping they don't have more temporary lockdowns. The Thundermaw can maybe go the distance. So let's see, this triggers whenever a dragon attacks, and then I can deal 2 damage to any other targets, including the Invasion, so we now control 2 Thundermaws. Alright, no lockdown or other sweeper, please. Because otherwise, next turn, if I attack, I get 6 Thundermaw triggers. So that's 12 damage just from attacking. Momentum Breaker. I guess we'll say goodbye to the engine now. And an Overlord. Alright, so our opponent's still taking 8 plus 8. 16. And Hellkite I can still cast. So that can destroy the fortress. So if they are planning to Pixie pick up a lockdown, they just die on the spot to the Invasion. If they go for Momentum Breaker, we can sack the Hellkite perhaps. Well, this has been a pretty interesting game. That temporary lockdown was a little unexpected, but of course makes sense in these black-white Pixie decks where you actively want to exile some of your cheaper things to then later pick it back up. So we'll see what their plan is. I'll go for Momentum Breaker, but if they just cast it, they seem dead on board. Sack the Hellkites. Keep double Thundermaw. Alright, and that'll do it. Awesome. So we get to see this red-black Dragons deck in action, and yeah, it seems to be pretty well positioned for the current best-of-1 meta, as long as aggro decks remain the dominant force, since we have lots of cheap removal, and then some very impactful 4 and 5 mana dragons that can likely stabilize us and then take over. So the aggro matchups should be alright, but that does mean we maybe give up some of the combo and control matchups, since our 4 and 5 mana dragons don't always line up great if our opponent's on a Beanstalk plus Sunfall strategy, since they can eventually just take over the late game, and we don't have a lot of hasty dragons to really punish sorcery speed sweepers, and against control we don't have a lot of interaction, just a duress to maybe take away some pieces, or maybe the Hellkite to keep a land tapped down. So if we don't have a particularly explosive draw, then we're probably going to get comboed out. But the good news is that we can pretty easily modify the deck for best of 3, as long as we keep that core package of Sarkhan and the dragons. We can bring in additional interaction based on the matchup, so that means additional discard spells for combo and control matchups, while taking out some of our dead removal spells. Against other creature decks we already have a lot of great tools, so we probably don't have to change too much, but we can always bring in additional artifact hate or graveyard hate if the matchup calls for it. So the only matchup I really fear with a deck like this are the Beanstalk decks, since there's no real clean answer to up the Beanstalk, so then our best bet is just having an explosive draw, but that's not really something the deck is great at. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.